Greetings, transit workers. We're transit workers for a fighting union, and at this time, we'd like to extend our thoughts to Brother Myron Pollock, a very senior train operator who was brutally assaulted at the Utica Avenue station just yesterday. And, he's in, his situation's bad. It's a very clear example of how dangerous this job is. Anyone who's ridden the subway or who's worked operating a train, being a conductor, knows this firsthand. And not just subway workers, but bus operators, it's beyond a reasonable doubt this job is hazardous. And that's just on top of the mechanical aspect, the mechanical hazards on this job. A lot of the conditions down there resemble what you had back in the 1800s. This is 2024, and that just shows you the degree of disregard that the MTA bosses have towards us. So I want to read our next point on work conditions. So we shouldn't have to kill ourselves to do our jobs. Injuries and death threaten workers and riders every day. The Safety Dispute Resolution Forum still keeps safety in the hands of the bosses who create the dangerous conditions to begin with. Workers should control safety. Any worker should be able to shut down unsafe work, and the entire union must back them up. And I do want to emphasize that last point is key, because if you were to just take your cues from the current leadership of the union, you'd never know that there's 40,000 members in this union with a lot of power. And on that point, I'd like to just leave the floor to Brother Richie and Brother Tom.
Thank you, Eddie. Hey, so I'm Richard. I'm a subway train operator by title, and while that's just one of various titles in the subway system, like Eddie said, every single title has a certain number of hazards that are very real. What happened to Brother Myron was perfectly preventable and was absolutely outrageous. But the question is, how do you exert control over safety in the industry? Our flyer mentions what we call the Safety Dispute Resolution Form, and it's an actual form that the idea is if an individual worker finds an unsafe condition or is compelled to do unsafe work, they can use the Safety Dispute Resolution Form to stop the work. But while we defend any individual worker's right to use that form, if that's their only means, there are some serious drawbacks to it. The biggest one is that it, again, leaves it in the hands of the individual worker, like everything else. The individual worker, it's incumbent upon them to take action in defense of safety individually against the bosses, and we think that that's wrong. The other thing that's wrong with it as well is that if you look at it, once you use the form, what it does is that it triggers this negotiation between the union and the company to make the job safe. That is to say, keep the trains rolling, keep the buses rolling again. So it doesn't necessarily address safety per se, it's just an obstacle before you can kind of negotiate to get the system moving again. So instead, what we kind of pose to that is a point of view, which is that every individual worker should have control of safety. In the subway system, in the industry at large, every individual worker should feel, should have agency and believe that they can, if they're encountered with unsafe work, be able to individually shut it down and understand they can do so with the backing of the union itself. We think that that's fundamentally different from the Safety Dispute Resolution Form, and we think that's a better starting point to actually address safety and make the system safer for workers and for riders as well.
Yeah, well, Richard talked about having agency. I mean, the Safety Dispute Resolution Form is just a piece of paper. That's all it is, unless the union is there to back up every worker. It really highlights the difference between transportation, where tens of thousands of our brothers and sisters work in isolation from any kind of union rep, and can't count on the union to be there at all. That's why there's so many disciplines, and it's very unsafe. In maintenance, we deal with horrific conditions as well. People breathing diesel exhaust for decades, encountering, multi-ton buses, multi-ton rail cars, 600 volts, tremendous hazards. And as we've said before, we shouldn't have to. It's just we've been to too many funerals. We've been to too many hospital beds. We've seen our coworkers either die on the job or die shortly after they leave the job, and it's just horrific. We need to have the power to shut down unsafe work, and the union safety reps for many, many years have all been appointed. But we, Transit Workers for Fighting Union, think that union safety reps and union safety committees should be elected positions, elected by the membership, elected from people who are the most trusted, the most militant. Because as we all know, every safety protection that we have has been written in the blood of coworkers who have died or been seriously injured because the bosses simply wanted people to do totally ridiculously unsafe things to keep service. It's service over safety. Of course, the whole situation with assaults deals with the whole grotesque decay that we all New Yorkers know, but everyone in the country sees this country in a really serious decay, and concomitantly crime and people with mental health issues and homelessness. So the broader questions are also impacting us. Eddie, you might want to say something about that.
Well, with this assault that happened at Utica, you're you're actually seeing what happens every time any kind of assault like this happens. And you just have with each time, you have more calls, whether it's by the current leadership in the union or the various oppositions, whether it's Progressive Action or the Stand Together slate. They all try to outdo each other for who can call for more cops, as if that's their job. Like, you don't resolve anything with the police state. This has been going on for so long, and anybody down there knows, you don't feel safe with the huge presence of police. It has never resolved the question of poverty, of crime, all the things that come from the grotesque inequality in this society. And the main reason that's pushed is because it's a very cheap thing for them. Because, of course, the politicians that run this city, they're going to be like, sure, we'll give you more cops, the more to bash the poor, the more to get money from the general public, to fleece them out of their hard-earned money. So anyways, one shouldn't feel that because there's no we're opposed to cops, that it's just the law of the jungle is going to reign down there. There's actually some very concrete steps that can actually be taken to ameliorate what's going on down there. And with that, I want to leave the floor open. Maybe Richie, you can talk about that.
Thank you.
Given that you're a train operator and you see firsthand how me too, but more cops, no.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. The job of the police is not to keep you safe, and I think that's something that really has to be kind of understood. And given that, I think that it is the individual worker and their union who is going to have the role in exerting safety. So, in the case of with what happened with Brother Myron, why does he have to be by himself when he's cleaning out his train? I think that one option or one way to kind of ensure that cleaning out your train would be safer would have a type of buddy system. 2 people are assigned to do it, or it doesn't happen. Same thing with personnel who work platform jobs. During rush hours, conductors, usually other personnel, they're assigned to certain stations. That should not be a solo job. At least 2 people, or it doesn't happen. You might remember a while ago, I think it was, on the Sea Line, brother Alston, he was a conductor. He had his throat slashed when he was observing the platform. That was very scary. What he was doing, he was observing the platform before the train pulled out of the station. That's part of his job, to make sure that the doorways are clear of people, that it's safe before the train can move out of the station. But does it require you to stick your head out the window? I think maybe by using video technology, conductors could perhaps observe the platform in a way that's safer to them, so that they're not put in harm's way. Those are just two ideas that I think would greatly increase the safety of personnel in subways. But also, it's important to stress what we believe is that working people have a right to defend themselves on the job and off the job. And I'd like to be part of a leadership that exerts that right. And you know, buses, it's same industry, but they have their issues as well. I'm sure Tom has talked to other coworkers about what could be done to make their jobs easier.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I agree with that. The workers should have the right to self-defense without any fear of reprisal. We've seen that happen with so many bus operators that have confrontations with the public, and they're in fear of doing anything lest they be out of a job. We also think that bus operators should have safe and comfortable enclosures. The management has dragged their heels at this, but everyone knows a contrast between New York City buses and, say, buses in Europe and elsewhere, where there's like completely enclosed cockpits. And workers should not have to confront anybody, transit workers should not have to confront anybody over a fare. And that's why they flooded the subways with National Guard and cops only a few months ago, encouraged, by the way, by the TWFU Local 100 leadership, as well as other opposition groups, Progressive Action and Stand Together. Just, one solo voice for more cops, more cops, more cops. We think that mass transit should be free. That's the historic position of the union. We already pay more than enough of taxes in this society. We're for ripping out the turnstiles. Transit, of course, costs a lot of money, but the government already gets a lot of money out of us and has a lot of money that they spend on, slaughters overseas and lining their own pockets and a lot of other things. So mass transit should be free. It's an essential public service. What else? Well, we're covering a lot of these questions. I mentioned that union safety reps should be elected. It's just really crushing and depressing when you find that coworkers who you've lived with for so long, finally retire, and it's only a year or two later that they die of some disease that's totally preventable. It is an incredibly, incredibly unsafe industry. I think we've mentioned before that in trains, we're dealing with fatalities pretty much on a weekly basis. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, with the riders.
Yeah, and this question of assaults is just, a terrible situation.
Yeah, and, I think that actually leaves a lot of food for thought. And we're going to continue this discussion in future videos that we're going to produce. In particular, the question about crime and decay in American society, because I think it's a question that for a lot of people seeing this video, they're going to be like, what? They're opposed to cops being in the subways? Well, as Tom had mentioned, that's actually the historic position. I'm sorry, I'm ripping out the turnstiles. That's the historic position of the union, but we oppose a police state, bottom line. So anyways, stay tuned. There's going to be further videos on the various points in our 5-point program. Stay tuned. Good night. Work
Thanks,
safe,
folks.
absolutely.